have a quote here. It's, we should not worry about dying. We should worry about not living a life that matters. Sean Swarner, author of Being Unstoppable, Conquering Your Everest. There we go. And we're going to talk about how you conquer your Everest and achieve all the dreams and all the things that you want that are a force for good in the world. Welcome, Sean.
Hey, I appreciate it. And I noticed that there's some yellow tag sticking out there. There must be something important in that book.
Yes, it was the quote. And we're going to cover a few other things here. I've had the wonderful opportunity to speak with you a couple times now, maybe once. I don't know. You're a friend. You're my buddy now. We're texting back and forth with each other. And you've had so many challenges to overcome. Many of them are health related, and some are mindset oriented, and you tie the two together really beautifully. I want to talk about the 5 barriers that are listed in your book, and we'll get to that in just a few minutes. But I'd like to have you go over just like, how did this all start for you, Sean?
You talked about the mindset and physical issues I've had to overcome. And first of all, let me apologize for wearing a hat and my motley hair. I'm actually leaving for Africa in a few days, and I cut it right before I go because I'm going to be gone for a month. And I think it's been a while, and I'm trying to do my best to stay away from every human being as long as possible until right before I go. So my apologies for that. But going back to, it's amazing how mental being physical is. And whenever you're encountering any physical ailment, any physical challenge, the mind breaks before the body does. And I think if people can look at it from a perspective of integrating the mind-body perspective, the mind-body integration there, you can see things from a completely different light. Because when I was going through, as we didn't mention it yet, but I've had 2 terminal cancers, and I cured the cancer in a number of ways. I think it was modern medicine, family support, the inner will to not give up and to always push forward. But I started by destroying the cancer from the inside. I'm a huge believer in vivid visualization, and I vividly visualize myself inside my body destroying the cancer cells, and also picturing myself in the future accomplishing something that meant that I had an emotional attachment to. And I did the same thing climbing Mount Everest, which I'm sure we'll get to later. But from the start, from the get-go, I've always believed that you can help yourself from the inside out.
And you know what? One of the things that, because we're skimming through your story because there's so much to cover and our time here together, but it isn't like you learned this vivid vision and the power of the mind as an adult. You learned this as a teenager. How did that happen? I mean, it must have been some natural, innate knowing of yours. And this might give you an opportunity to let people who are here with us today know what you went through during that time frame. And then the first time you put it into practice after healing and going to a swim meet.
Let's take the Mr. Peabody's Wayback Machine and go back to 1988. And picture me being 13 years old, 60, 70 pounds overweight, laying in the hospital bed. We didn't have cell phones. We didn't have the technology of 7,000 channels on TV. I think on the TV monitor in my hospital bedroom, they were telling me what was for lunch, and then like the Hallmark channel that replayed everything every 30 minutes anyhow. So it was boring. So I'm guessing, looking back on it in hindsight, I think maybe I was just so bored, I used my imagination to go inside. I don't know, have you ever heard of or read any Calvin and Hobbes comic strips?
Oh, I love Calvin.
So,
yes.
Yeah. So Bill Watterson was the author, and I used to read the Sunday comics all the time. It was probably my favorite one. And he had his alter ego, which was Spaceman Spiff.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was him and his little tiger, but his alter ego, he would go somewhere else. And I think that got into my brain. I wanted to go somewhere else as well, because my situation was very similar to his, where if I wasn't enjoying the day because I was vomiting for 36 hours straight, or I couldn't move for a week, and I was in the hospital bed for a week. So because of the situation where I wasn't ideal, I took my mind somewhere else. And it was actually inside my body in a microscopic spaceship, flying around my veins, destroying the cancer by shooting missiles and lasers that were laden with chemotherapy. So in my mind, I was destroying it from the inside out. But at the same time, I would also visualize myself completing a 50-meter breaststroke back and forth, because I was a swimmer for years. I think I still have records from like 1987 that I've been told, well, they'll never be broken. But I'm sure someday they will be. Someone faster, much better than me. But I would visualize myself going back and forth, and it wasn't the end product. It wasn't touching the wall. It wasn't coming in first place that meant something to me. I visualized that, but I went deeper. So when I touched the wall in my mind, how did I feel doing that? And I think that's the disconnect most people have when they do vivid visualization. They see themselves doing it and then they stop. But you have to incorporate the sense of smell, the sense of taste, your hearing, which is what I did with the swimming. I would hear the air bubbles kind of when I came up to breathe. I would go back underwater. The sound would disappear. It was so quiet. It was deafening, if you can understand that. Then I'd pop back up. I'd hear my brother at the end of the wall shouting at me, "Go, Sean," because he's always been there to support me, 3 years younger than I am. And I did the same thing on Mount Everest. I heard the styrofoam crunching of the snow under my feet. I smelled the ozone. I felt the sun's radiation on my face. So incorporating all my senses and making it real up here. So essentially, I was already successful before I even began.
Two things came to mind with that description, Sean, and that's such a great story. And it's a real story. It's not an imagined story, although imagination comes into this, is that the author of this comic strip had no idea the impact that it could make on somebody who could use that imagination metaphor for life changing. And then you now, as an author, writing this book about being unstoppable and conquering your Everest, you have no idea the difference that it's going to make in people that you will never know, that you may never meet or speak to. And that's such a powerful, for all the people that I'm speaking with during these interviews who are authors, we just don't know what our life experience and our story and our willingness. Is not easy to write these things. It's not easy to be an author and put it down on paper and get it out into the world, but it's so rewarding. Now, you just mentioned all the visualization that you went through to prepare for this swim meet. And as I remember from reading your book, the swim meet was the first real, like, you'd been swimming some, but you hadn't really been out of that chemotherapy bed for very long. Tell us what happened.
Even leading up to that, it was very difficult, because I would zip up and down the water like a dolphin before the chemotherapies. I was the fastest person. I was undefeated in the summer league. So when I was getting back into shape, and I was, as I mentioned earlier, 60, 70 pounds overweight, I didn't look so great in that oh so flattering Speedo. Things coming out in places they shouldn't have been coming out. But I had the confidence enough to try, to take that first step. I was embarrassed at who I was. And I remember a story my brother told me years afterwards, where I was at a swim practice and people were kind of talking amongst themselves in the groups. Who's that fat new kid? God, he's so gross. But he sounds just like Sean, because I was so swollen. And my brother went up to them and told them, "Hey, that's my brother. He's going through chemotherapy, and this is what it does. It swells up your joints in your body." And then they accepted me back in. oftentimes it is very difficult to have that courage to take that first step. However, you have to just take another step, then another step. Your first step is never your last. So when I got in the water and I started swimming back and forth, I thought in my mind, oh, this is going to be great. I'm going to swim just like a dolphin, back and forth, no problem. It's going to be fantastic. I figured I was going to do a 100-meter breaststroke, 4 laps back and forth. I barely made it 1 lap. I felt like my arms were at the bottom of the pool. I couldn't even breathe. I couldn't walk. I couldn't move my arms at all. I had to pull myself. I had to use the ladder to pull myself out, where normally I'd swim up to the edge of the water, whoop, pop right out. I had no endurance. I had no strength, which is just completely defeating.
And a lot of people would have just said, oh, this will never happen.
Yeah, absolutely. But
you didn't.
Because of what it meant to me and how much I wanted to get back to where I was and even go beyond that. That's what kept me going. And also the little voice in the back of my head, who turned out to be my brother when I was in the locker room with my towel over my body, weeping. He was like, you can do this. So
you mentioned supportive family as one of the things that helped you. And you're so lucky to have your brother, but still there are people, family members, friends, who are willing to support somebody who stays defeated. And because I live in the land of I can, and the message of the land of I can is to trust, believe, and take one step, because you have to trust that this is possible, because you don't know it yet as reality. You have to believe it now in this place before it becomes a reality. And you have to take one step towards that. And it's a journey. It's a lot of steps connected to each other. And so at that time, when you couldn't even pull yourself up onto the lip of the pool without using the ladder, how long was it until you actually took place in the meet that we're kind of alluding to here?
I think it was months later. But going back to kind of what you alluded to, having the right mindset, I remember being 60 pounds overweight, bald from head to toe, on my hands and knees in the bottom of the shower. The water was filling up because my hair was clogging the drain. And I was sobbing. I was just weeping. But in that moment, when I was 13, I realized that I didn't want to focus on not dying. I wanted to focus on living.
Yeah, which is the quote that we started with.
Exactly. How many entrepreneurs get into whatever they're getting into with the mindset of, oh, I don't want to lose money? Zero. Or everybody who's lost money who's doing something else now. With the right mindset, you don't focus on the avoidance of what you don't want. You focus on what you do want. Your energy and attention go towards that, as opposed to, say, running a marathon. You're not telling yourself, don't stop, because eventually you will. But if you tell yourself, keep going, keep pushing, keep trying, make it to the next lap, go a little bit further. So when I went down that 1 lap the first time, I made sure I went down and then back the next day, and then down and then back and then down. Just slightly a little bit more every day. Because one thing, even before the cancer, when I was 13 for the first cancer, my parents instilled in me, I never had to be the best. I had to be my best.
That's a beautiful thing. You have a beautiful family.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah. So, and you were born into that. And my belief system is that we are born into a particular life experience, that if we embrace it and come out the other side, we have a story and a message. And we now, as messengers on a mission, you're on a mission. I know that. And so we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But to put a point on this story, tell everybody how you actually finished that meet. Did you come in first?
Not only did I come in first, everything I visualized and saw for months and months and months came true. I touched the wall and I remember popping up and looking to my right, looking to my left, and there was no one in sight, no competitors in sight. I beat them by body lengths. Yeah. It came true.
That just gave me shivers. It's like you didn't just win. You won hands down, because there wasn't somebody right next to you seconds away. You left them in the dirt, so to speak, even though it was in the pool.
I left them in my wake.
I love that story. And to me, it really sets the stage for so much in this book. And I know you're going to be writing other books, but this one, Conquering Your Everest, it talks about your preparation for Everest. But then even after you conquered Everest, you conquered 7 summits. right? You did them all.
Yep, highest mountain on every continent. I figured after Everest, the rest are downhill, right?
Yeah, yeah. And then you did even more than that.
Then I skied to the North and South Poles. So if you combine the 7 summits with the North and South Poles, I don't know who named it, but it's called the Explorers Grand Slam, which I still personally think sounds like a Denny's breakfast platter. I don't know where it came from. Like I was going to make it to the North Pole and there was going to be some hash browns and bacon and toast waiting for me.
Yeah, not true, but
Not at all.
yeah, and you actually have on Amazon a documentary about that. Yeah.
Absolutely. And
So in addition to your book, you have the documentary. Fast forward, we're going to get to the 5 barriers in a few minutes, but fast forward to today. I know that you are getting ready for this climb to Kilimanjaro, and it is your cancer survivor climb, so to speak.
It is, however, the cancer survivor trip is in July. And we're starting something new where this is actually for CEOs and individuals who want more from life, people who think that they're missing something. The way that came about was this will be my 22nd trip up Kilimanjaro. And the average success rate on the mountain is 48%. I'm at 99% success rate. So double the average. And I started thinking, well, how is that possible? And it's because we go a little bit deeper, because everyone shows up in the mountain and they think, oh, I'm going to conquer that mountain. But if it's you versus Mother Nature, she's going to take you down every single time. I don't care who you are. You don't conquer the mountain, you learn to conquer yourself. So this is, yes, it's technically an expedition, but it's an inspedition. It's an inward journey with an outward adventure. I
loved when we spoke about this before, because I was considering being on your February journey, and I had too many conflicts, and now I've got July as a possibility here on the calendar, because I know that I will do a climb with you. But you make it deep and joyful. It's not a trudging. It's not a how fast can we get there, even though it is on a timeline. You make it full experiential for people, so that it becomes, I haven't done it yet, but I can see that you are making this an integrated experience for people.
There are metaphors all over the mountain, from the compound effect to being mindful, and even just enjoying the journey. We're the only group on the mountain singing and dancing and having a great time and enjoying the process. And by doing that, the summit becomes a byproduct of having fun.
Yeah, isn't that the truth? I just participated in the Genius Network, a 55-day implementation program, which I won't get into, but the idea behind it is, yes, there is a prize for the person who wins, but it doesn't matter. Right. If you do the 55 days and you're implementing, the prize is that you did it and that you're in the process. So I love that. Now, talking about you're getting ready for this journey that you've done so many times before, but you just had knee surgery a couple weeks ago, right? When I found out that you had done that, because you went kind of radio silent on me for a while, and I'm like, Sean, are you okay? And you came back and said, oh yeah, I just had knee surgery. And you texted me a picture with a big smiley face on the bandages. I was like, how in the world is he going to recover from a knee surgery in time to lead this trip in Africa? And then we were just talking a little bit about it before I pressed the record button. I would love for you to share with people, because we're talking about really the combination of the mindset, the support team, and then what you do in the world. As you did with the swimming, you got out in the pool and you kept on going, even when it felt terrible. So you're actually doing a physical process now that speeds things up for you. Tell us about that.
I think the number one driving force for recovering from knee surgery and climbing the highest mountain in Africa 4 weeks later is, for me, it's not about the mountain. It's not about the summit. It's about the people I take up there. I dedicated my time to them. I'm devoting my time to help them reach their summit. So one of my core values is encouragement, and I'm encouraging people to do this. I'm going to show them the way. and everyone's going to be perfectly fine. Is it going to be easy? No. Is it going to be worth it? Yes. So that's the number one driving force, knowing that I'm doing it for others, just serving. The second one is utilizing modern technology, which I had no idea even existed until the guy put this painful clamp on my leg and told me to work. It's called blood flow restriction therapy, and it's almost like a blood pressure cuff, but it goes on my leg almost all the way up to my groin without getting too descriptive, and it cuts off the blood supply, not completely, but mostly. And then I did single leg squats on a sled. I would start off with 30 reps, the wait 30 seconds, then do 15 reps, wait 30 seconds, 15 reps, wait 30 seconds, 15 reps, wait 30 seconds. So somehow I need to do more research on it. So I can speak more intelligently on it. Because it restricts the blood flow, it triggers something in the brain to work with the chemistry and the chemicals that are going to the rejuvenation of the tissue that needs to be healed.
I find that fascinating because it's combining the mind, the brain,
Absolutely.
and the body.
Yeah, it's I wouldn't exactly say it's comfortable, but it's phenomenal. And the guy I was talking to, my physical therapist, told me some people love it, some people hate it. I hated it so much, I loved it.
It's like this thing hurts so badly, I'm going to love it. So it makes a difference that I can tolerate it. Well, I remember seeing on your Instagram that you were doing steps, and that was like 2 weeks after surgery. I know people that can't even bend their leg enough to get in a car after knee surgery, and you're doing stairs. So you're doing something right, Sean, between the mind, the body, the support team that you have with family and physical therapy and good physicians. And God love you. You're going to do this trip to Kilimanjaro a month after knee surgery.
I think one of the insights that people need to understand is that we are all capable of more. We just need to stop believing our own excuses.
Yeah, we limit ourselves so much. Those stories that we have in our head that say, oh, I could never do that. I'm 71 years old, where I'm going to do it. Yeah. Or, I can't do it because of blah, blah, blah. And once we tell ourselves a different story and say, oh, I can do it, I just can't do it in February, I can do it on a different date in July or some future date.
Exactly.
So yeah, it's certainly a reframing, which kind of brings me, quite frankly, to the beginning of the 5 barriers in your book, because there's a quote at the beginning of chapter 11 by you that says, our thoughts then direct our actions, and those actions shape our lives. So chapter 12 is the breakdown of the different barriers. And the first barrier is negative self-talk. So do you want to add anything to that before we go to barrier 2? Because we really kind of have been covering that. But if there's anything that you would like to share.
Essentially, human beings are a representation of repetition. Let me ask you, put it this way. What do moms and dads do every morning when they wake up? They have a routine. What do meteorologists do when they wake up in the morning? They have a routine. What do Olympic athletes do when they wake up in the morning? They have a routine. If you want something different, do something different. Yeah. So if you've been doing something the same way for the X number of years you've been alive and you're expecting different results, Einstein, as we all know, defines that as insanity. If you look at the patterns that you have developed throughout your day, the one suggestion I could give is find one thing that really holds you back, that giant monkey on your back that has more control over you more than anything else. Get rid of it and replace it with something else. Don't try to replace and get rid of all your bad habits all at once. You'll be completely overwhelmed.
You'll stop. Yeah, you'll be overwhelmed and you'll stop. It's kind of like New Year's resolutions. You make 30 resolutions, and by day 3, you just throw the list out the window because there's no way that you can do 30. I'm always like, pick one thing. Exactly. And that's exactly what you just shared. Pick one thing and really address that one thing. You mentioned something earlier also that I think feeds into this, that you had a passion to achieve something. You had an inner drive. It was really important to you. And I think when we define what's important to us, what matters to us, and we can lock into that, that's our why we're going to get that monkey, that one thing off our back. Because if we just do it because we think we're supposed to, that's not a good enough reason.
It's funny you mentioned that, because I've actually, for years and years, I've always wanted to put something together to help people with that. And I wanted to start with myself. So I actually put together, it's an online program, and I have a list of core values. I listed out from the list of 60, I put down 10. And I'm looking through here. This one's from March 15th last year. So I just opened it up. I do this every 3 weeks. And I wrote down my top 10 personal core values. And I see my fifth one was personal growth. Okay. And that's great knowing what it is. But as soon as you can rank how you're actually living that value on a scale of 1 to 10, how you're actually walking the talk, I put myself at an incredibly low number 2. Personal growth is incredibly important to me. So when I wrote down that I was actually living that at a number 2, I was incredibly sad. However, I saw it as an opportunity to know exactly where I want to start focusing my attention. That became my why. What can I get rid of to help me focus more on my personal growth? First thing I thought of, get rid of the stupid boob tube, as my dad would call it. Get rid of the television and read more. Yes. So then flash forward a year later, my personal growth now is up at an 8 or a 9. Find one thing. But if you know what you value most in your life, and you rank it on a scale of 1 to 10, where you're living that value, you don't have to just say, oh, well, maybe I'll try this. No, you know exactly where you can start and what you can get rid of.
It's called focusing on what matters.
Absolutely.
So negative self-talk is the first barrier to success. The second barrier is dream guilt. Let's talk a little bit about that.
When I first came up with the half crazy idea of becoming the first cancer survivor to climb Mount Everest, no one had ever done it before. That goes back to survivor's guilt. That goes back to doing something no one's ever done before. Why me? And even on the mountain, when I was stepping over bodies, I thought to myself, well, why did this guy perish and die on the mountain? And what's going to continue to protect me? And why won't I die? You know, having these giant dreams, these Everest-sized dreams, you start to compare yourself to other people and think, well, you know, they're not doing it. I'm going to feel guilty for having more or doing more or being capable of more. When that goes back again to what my parents taught me, I don't have to be the best. I have to be my best. And what happens when you get to the top of a mountain, you can reach down and pull somebody else up.
Yeah, I have another client, Robert De Laurentiis, who he called it his impossibly big dream. You know, if we believe that all things are possible, then it is an impossibly big dream to reach out. And then when you reach that, then you often say, well, gee, I did that. Maybe I can do something more. I remember the first time I ran my first marathon, I had done some 10Ks and then I did one half marathon. I'm like, well, if I did a half marathon, I can probably do a marathon. And then I did the marathon and I did it in a really good time for my age class. And I actually had paced myself. You probably will understand this as an athlete, that sometimes when they're running, and this probably happens with swimming, people come out of the gate and they use up all their energy and then they are failing towards the end, where I really paced myself and held back from what my normal pace was. And my last 7 miles, which are supposed to be the hardest in a marathon, were my fastest.
Oh.
And I finished it and I'm like, okay, that wasn't so bad. I'll bet I could do one faster than that. So we set up a goal, we do it. And then we go like, well, wait a minute, that really wasn't as hard as I thought it might be. So it's such a learning thing. And then to know that there are people that might say, oh, gee, I wish I could run a marathon. How did you do that? You know, it's that lifting up and helping other people, that first they get to see that you did it. And then you can be a coach, a mentor, a friend, and support them with their dream. Which kind of brings us to what is a barrier, external influences. So that's a positive influence whenever we're helping somebody. But what are some of the external influences that are a barrier?
Perfect example, going back to Everest. One thing that we've neglected to mention is that I only have one functioning lung.
Oh, that's right. We did.
Right?
We left that major
little
thing
detail.
out.
When I first came up with this idea of climbing Everest with half my lung capacity and being the first cancer survivor to make it to the top of the world, 99% of the climbing industry told me it was physiologically impossible. But whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. And I didn't listen to the 99%. I listened to the 1% who were there encouraging me. And it goes back to the same people who were there with me when I was going through my treatments. My mom, my dad, my brother, my family, my close friends. Everyone who didn't know me as a human being, as an individual personally, they all thought it was impossible. They didn't think I was going to make it past Camp 2 when I was the third person that season to make it to the top of the world. You can't listen to the naysayers. You have to block that out. Or what I did, I used it as fuel for the fire.
Yes. Yes. It's like, tell me I can't do something. Well, you just watch.
I don't think you have a blurry part that you can put on there, but that's kind of like what you do to the people who are like, nope, you can't do that. They're so negative. But you know what? That's their issue.
Yes.
Not mine.
Yes. Yes. Isn't that the truth? My mother was a stay-at-home mom. My dad worked in the steel mills. We're not talking about people who were reading personal growth books back in the 50s. But my mom used to always say, Susan, you can do anything you put your mind to. And that has served me because I've had my obstacles. And but I always had that belief system like, no, I believe I can do this. And I'm gonna move forward with that belief. So barrier number 4, life constraints. You just mentioned you have a real world life constraint, one lung.
Life constraints can be anything. You just have to take it with a grain of salt and have a good sense of humor. Even with Kilimanjaro, people are always saying, well, I could never do that. And because people, one of the biggest responses I get when they say, I could never do that, they say, oh, I have exercise-induced asthma. I just come back, I have one lung. You know, what next excuse, please? I
mean, what I think about when I'm talking with clients about writing a book, and the biggest thing for me to overcome when I'm to convey, to help them overcome is a better way to put it, is that you don't have to be a writer to be an author. But one of the constraints that I often hear is, I'm not a writer. It doesn't matter. You know, we have editors in the world. That's what they're there for. Or I don't have the time to write. And it really isn't. If you have a process that you go through, and just like getting ready to climb Kilimanjaro, getting ready to do the swim, you know you have to set a certain amount of time aside, but life goes on. It isn't like you're doing that 24/7. So there are always life constraints. And you probably hear, just like getting ready to do this climb to Kilimanjaro, you probably hear some repetitive things all the time. What are some of those things?
The biggest issue people have is, I don't live in the mountains. I can't train for the altitude. I've taken people from Miami to South Carolina to Colorado. I've taken people from 13 to 70 years old.
Oh, good. I'll be your oldest then. When I do it.
That's great. I'd love it. Yeah, we can get really deep in talking about stuff like this.
Yeah.
It's when I was first training for Everest and I came up with the idea, I wanted to climb to the top of the world. I was living in Jacksonville, Florida. You know, I don't know too many mountaineers who live in Florida. In fact, the highest point in the state is the top of the Four Seasons Hotel in Miami. So I moved to Colorado. I got rid of what wasn't going to serve me. So
you could have been doing stairs instead of taking the elevator. You could have been doing the stairs up and down the Four Seasons.
I don't think Isidore Sharp would appreciate that too much.
But you find a way. Exactly. You find a way. You know, there really isn't any life constraints.
Exactly. The life constraints are, they're part of also what I call gales, and we'll have to talk about that later. The gremlins, the interpretation, no, the gremlins, the assumptions, the interpretations, and the limiting beliefs.
Let's talk about that right now.
Okay.
Let's talk about the gremlins, and then we'll close with barrier number 5.
The gremlin is the one that's most emotionally attached to who you are. It's that voice in your ear, that little voice in the back of your mind, and not the voice where they're going to wrap you up in a straight jacket and put you in a padded room. I mean, that's a completely different voice. Don't listen to that one. The other one is the little voice that's saying, "Hey, Susan, you're not good enough for that. You're not strong enough. You're too old to climb Kilimanjaro." And that's when you start battling your internal dialogue. I'm strong enough. I can handle this. No, you can't. Good cop, bad cop.
Yes.
Angel, devil. And I believe it came from younger in your life when he or she, mine's Cooper, I call him Cooper. Cooper was there earlier in my life to protect me from something. And now whenever I hear that voice and he rears his ugly little gnome head, I tell him, "Look, dude, stop. I'm here with you, and we both want what's best for me to move forward together because we both want to be successful people." So if I'm constantly being told that I'm belittling myself, I'm never going to move forward. And that's the one that's most closely related to your feelings and your emotions, and it's the most difficult to get rid of.
Yeah, because they're real.
Exactly.
I mean, Cooper, was that the name?
Cooper, yeah, it's real to you. It's real.
Exactly. Cooper is real to you,
right?
Because Cooper was there when you were younger to keep you safe and protect you and warn you. And now it's time for Cooper to come along on the journey and not to hold you back and for you to do it together. Yeah. I want to see a little Cooper on your backpack. So barrier number 5, waiting for permission. I don't think you wait for permission.
I actually have a friend who works in a pharmaceutical industry. He works at a company, and we're trying to get me to become the face of the oncology institution, the oncology division over there. And he said, "Well, we have to go through this channel. I have to go through this channel. I have to go through this channel. You have to go through this channel." Like I'm not one who's typically set on my ways and believing in doing things the normal way. I started with
entrepreneurs do things the way they want to do them when they want to do them.
So it's incredibly frustrating how the world works sometimes. All the hoops and loops you have to go over and mountains you have to climb to get where you want to go. So that's why I decided I'm just going to do my own thing. And I'm going to stop listening to other people telling me their side of the story, because they're telling me what they see from their perspective. Not that it's wrong. It's just not right for me.
Yeah. So
people always have a different perspective. They could potentially tell you that you should limit yourself because, you might get hurt.
Yeah. People live in a state of fear. Yes.
Just I appreciate the love, Mom, where it's coming from. I appreciate that. And I know it's coming from a place of love and concern, but I also know my own limits more than anyone else. I just need that encouragement to push those limits.
And then continue to push those limits. Like
Absolutely.
Each time you climbed Everest, and then you went on to tackle other mountains and other things. And that's just what we do when we're on a mission and we are stretching ourselves and constantly growing. So this trip to Kilimanjaro that we've been talking about and batting around a little bit, can you tell us a little bit more about how long it lasts, how often you do it, what the experience is, and how people can find out more if they're interested in doing a trip with you?
Absolutely. It's a 7-day trip up and down the mountain. The night of the 5th day, we wake up at 11, we leave at midnight, and we hike from midnight until 6:30. The latest was 10 to get to the summit. And then we hike back down a couple hours because it's a lot faster coming down than going up. And we rest at that camp, maybe an hour, 2 hours, and then we continue on down, sleep there, where you'll probably have the best night of sleep of your life. And then continue out. You're out cold. And then you continue on the rest of the way. we go down to the same hotel where we left to go up the mountain. And then the next day, we actually fly into the Serengeti. And as you know, it's not called an airport, it's an airstrip, which is a
Yes, that's right.
dirt runway in the middle of nowhere. Last time we were coming down to land, the pilot had to pull up because a group of gazelle ran across and he had to go back up, did a figure eight. And then all of a sudden, while he was up there, I hear him, pardon my French, I literally hear him go, "Oh shit." And you never want to hear your pilot say that.
Exactly.
I leaned over.
Yeah, there's animals. They love the airstrips because it's warm. It absorbs the sun, and they just want to hang out there.
Yes. So I leaned up and I was like, "Is everything okay?" He's like, "Yeah, I lost the airstrip." I was like, "Oh, that's not good." So then we just did circles, and all of a sudden he found it and came back down. Yeah. But it's an exciting inward adventure with an outward journey. All right, it's an inward journey with an outward adventure. So 7 days on the mountain, we celebrate with 4 days on a safari, go through the Ngorongoro crater, Serengeti, and potentially either Tarangire National Park or Lake Manyara. It's life changing.
To me, that is such a beautiful, from the very beginning when we met and we talked about it, because I love Africa. I love pushing myself, like the marathon, and then going faster. I love having something that is an experience. And through that experience and my growth, I'm a better person on the other side. I'm a different person on the other side, and I'll have more to share with the world as a result of that experience. Sean's book is Being Unstoppable, Conquering Your Everest. But more than that, Sean is doing more in the world with trips, his journeys, his representation, maybe with the oncology department. You are definitely a messenger on a mission. And if you had to summarize what that mission is, what would you say, Sean?
Ooh, that's a great question. Off the top of my head, I would say I am probably on earth to encourage people to believe more in themselves and to help them understand they're capable of more. And to help them actually reach that, because we are all capable of tremendous things. We just have to believe it. And I want people to see in themselves what I see in them.
Yeah, it's like taking off the blinders, isn't it?
Absolutely. I want people to believe in their own potentials and also find their purpose, their passion, and their meaning. Because so many people think that looking at the mountains, even, I reached Everest. I unfurled a flag that had names of people touched by cancer. I wept like a baby. I did the same thing on all 7 summits, but it was never about the destination. It was never about the goal. It was about enjoying the journey, the process. Because when I got to the North Pole and completed the Explorer's Grand Slam, the 7 summits and the 2 poles, people often ask me, "Well, that must have been tremendous. It must have felt great." In all honesty, I was depressed. Yeah. Because I was so focused on that, I thought to myself, okay, well, what's next? So it's not about the end result. It's not about the shiny car. It's not about the new house. It's about enjoying the process and knowing all that stuff could go away like that.
Yeah.
Focus on what's important.
You know what just hit me when you were saying that you were depressed at the end? When I did my 500-mile walk with the Camino de Santiago, and I wasn't sure I could do it, but I was going to go with the idea that I'm going to do it. And I wanted to do it in 5 weeks, which they say is a comfortable walk. It's 15 miles per day. And as I got closer, and I had people were having injuries in their feet, like blisters and torn muscles and knee problems. And I had nothing throughout the whole journey. And as I got closer and closer to Santiago, which is the goal, I started to get depressed because I didn't want the journey to end. The experience had been so phenomenal. Those last 3 or 4 days, I was sad instead of joyful, like, oh my gosh, I'm almost there. It's like, oh, you mean I have to go back? You mean I can't keep doing this for the rest of my life? So yeah, it's really interesting when you look at it, that it's the experience that we want to have. It's not a goal or a thing, even though there has to be a goal at the end in order for the journey to have a destination to it. But it's that feeling of like, we did it. We did it. And you're doing it all the time, Sean, and helping other people do it. So bless you. Thank you so very much for being a guest here on Messengers on a Mission, because you are a messenger and you are on a mission.
I couldn't think of a better way to just say thank you. It's a tremendous honor being here, and from a person who is a fellow African lover. I see the painting back there.
Yeah, my
These are
lion.
some friends who painted some things for me.
Yes.
This is just the beginning.
It's the beginning until we're not able to do any more. This is just the beginning. Thank you again and bless you.
Thank you.